Welcome back to Motivation Mondays with Monica Marie Jones. I am here with Chris Jackson, commercial real estate developer, businessman, managing partner of Queen Lillian LLC, and we are talking about all things real estate, business, community, and I want to pick the discussion back up with a little conversation we had behind the scenes. We were talking about Detroit Public Schools. Now, over the last several years, many Detroit Public Schools are now vacant. And I've noticed that there's a real estate department where they're trying to auction off the schools so people can use them for different uses. For example, the old Redford High School is now a Meyer. There's other schools that are lofts now. There's a school that's a theater now. And so I was immediately in love with that idea. And one of my long-term investing goals is to become a developer and to take gems like that, because a lot of them are historically amazing. The architecture, there are pools, there are gems. And I would love to take one of those and transform it into a self-sustaining community, if you will. So you have the housing, you have where people can work there, you have an in-house after-school program, recreation center going on, fitness for the community. So I've done some research, I've taken some steps, but if someone is like myself is interested in doing a project like that, where do I start? How should I go about it?
Well, Detroit Public Schools has done a great job in that they have assembled all the properties that were formerly schools that are now on the market to be sold, all into one website. I don't know the actual website, what it says, but it's very easy to bring up and Google it. And they list all the properties on that website. The lady that oversees the whole real estate acquisition or development or sales is Tammy Dean from Detroit Public Schools. And so she facilitates that whole process, and there is a very standardized offer to purchase document that they have on that website, that if you see a property, you can actually, call them. They will arrange for you to tour the building if you have an interest. You got to have a flashlight
Right.
because there's no power on. And then if you find that one of these properties is something that you have an interest in, you can make an offer. And they have that standardized form, so you don't have to go hire an attorney to draft up an offer document or anything. You don't have to have your own broker. So this is a transaction that would take place between you and the Detroit Public Schools directly. So that's a benefit. So you do not have to worry about the brokerage fees in the case that you do purchase the property. In some cases where there is an interest from more than one buyer, DPS then will sort of put it out sort of like for bid. There are these closed bids, and you would make your offer, and they will open them up, and whoever is the highest bidder, then they will enter into negotiations for the offer to purchase.
Now, I have a question that I've always wanted to ask someone, and I saw when I was reading about you that you talk about the importance of knowing systems and processes when it comes to things. And I was always, so I'm like, highest or best offer. So what if I bid or offer $1 and no one else outbids me? Will that work, or is there a minimum bid?
Well, in my experience, I'm currently in the process of trying to purchase a piece of property for Detroit Public Schools, my partner and I. And the starting bid, if you will, is the appraised value.
Okay.
So they've appraised all the properties that are on the website. And if they have not appraised them, if you make an offer, they will go out and get an updated appraisal. They argue that the starting price, if you will, is the minimum of what the appraisal is. And they have sold many of the properties for above the appraised value. Now, there is an argument for when you say highest and best use, and that even though there may be an appraised value, depending on what you're going to do with that property and the value that it has, the intrinsic value to the city of Detroit, and putting something on the tax rolls that ultimately benefits Detroit Public Schools and the city of Detroit, one can argue that the appraised value may be too much from a land acquisition perspective, because these are old schools,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a lot of redevelopment that has to take place.
Yes.
And so, one of the arguments that I've been making is that the DPS needs to not only just look at the appraised value, but the highest and best use and the overall benefit of the development itself. Now, of course, they don't want to just sell. At one time they didn't want to just sell property and then you just go and sit on it, and then it's just an abandoned building that you're a speculator. And so then they did switch gears and they wanted to see what your development plan was. But I think the trend now is going a little bit, the pendulum is going back to they need cash, and if you make a good faith offer and they're willing to go and do a deal with you.
Yeah, so that goes to, like, don't be discouraged. There's always a way. When you have a plan or a vision, really check, like you said, check the processes, check the systems, talk to people, because there may be a way to even work something out beyond what they say the parameters are, if you will. Okay, so another topic I wanted to touch on is financial freedom and financial literacy. When I turned 32, I realized that I had degrees and book smarts and was making great money, but I had absolutely nothing to show for it. I didn't own anything. I didn't have any investments. So I started to study financial literacy and financial freedom for like 3 years. So, and I noticed that it's like a mindset thing. So how would you say, or what how can we break free from the mindsets and the behaviors where it's like, I have to have a job, I have to have security, I live paycheck to paycheck, I have to be in the rat race? How do we break free from that when we're so embedded in our entire existence?
Well, unfortunately and unfortunately, Detroit was the hub for the really part of the Industrial Revolution and here in the United States, and the automotive boom, if you will. And one of the things that it did, it provided jobs and security for many families here in the Detroit area. That's on the positive side, but on the negative side, I think it took away some of our entrepreneurial spirit.
Yes.
Because everyone could go get a job from Henry Ford making $5 a day. And then they got pensions and they got health care. And so that sort of took away from that need. Many people who were immigrants, even that came over from Ireland and England and other places, they were entrepreneurial in spirit when they were there, and then they came here and they got $5 a day in the factory, and the entrepreneurial spirit went away.
Yeah,
and so
I was studying like Black Bottom and Paradise Valley, and they talk about all the businesses, and I'm like, well, what happened? But like you said, if it's that easy security, sometimes, quote unquote, people just think, okay, I can go do this.
Because the jobs were readily available. We have gone then, now since through a number of recessions, and one can even call it depressions, back in, the late 90s and even early 2000s and the like. And so where we are now, we almost have no choice but to be entrepreneurs if you want to feed your family. And it's just the entrepreneurial market, entrepreneurial market where, if you have an idea, if you have a concept, if you have the drive, there is money to be made. There is a business that can be started. There's an idea that can be cultivated. And so I think, we have to just harness that. We're not going to have the Ford Motor Companies of the world anymore, where they'll come in here and just throw 50,000 jobs at us.
Right.
And so we have to get creative. We want to stay within the parameters of the law. And so we have so many brilliant people in our community, so many brilliant young men and young ladies. And if they can just use that brilliance to do something constructive, they actually, they know how to market. They know how to sell an idea. They know how to organize, around something. And so it's just a matter of trying to channel that into something positive and constructive.
Right.
And that's what we really need to be, is feeding that entrepreneurial spirit.
Now, you talked about the depression or the recession, and in my studies, I found that a lot of the most wealthy families and movements actually came out of times of depression, like the Rockefellers, right? And like for me, I got into the real estate game because my first property costs $500. So there can be, as we say every week, there can be some strength in the struggle. There can be power in pain. You can find victory in the midst of whatever your circumstances are. So talk about, you know, some challenges or some roadblocks or some barriers you may have faced, and how that actually maybe catapulted or attributed to or gave you lessons that led to your success.
Well, you know, one that's not very long ago, guess it's about 8 years ago, I was a partner in Greektown Casino. One of the original managing partners. We opened up in 2000, 2008, 2009, I sold my interest. At that time, the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians were our partners. We weren't really getting along very well, and so the local African American partners decided that we either wanted to try to buy them out, or then they buy us out. So it turned out that they were going to buy out our interests. And so we worked out a buyout arrangement that was supposed to last over a 4-year period of time by the time we got paid all our money. Well, in the middle of that, 2 years in, the tribe, they actually embarked upon a business practice where they wanted to wipe out their debt. So they reneged on the buyout. And so there was still 2 years of payments owed to the partners. And so we lost millions of dollars in that. They actually filed bankruptcy, and that transaction wiped out a lot of money that was owed to us, the local partners. So that was clearly, it was some adversity there. So Frank, I mean, I guess the good thing was that the money that we were paid initially, some of the early buyout provisions, I was able to put some of that money away, had money in the market, and had to start to invest it in other things. And so at that time, I never thought that I would, you know, have to really rely on some of those other investments, and really having to start this whole new career, because we thought that this buyout would sort of be the golden parachute. But in fact, I had to use that capital as the foundation for Queen Lillian and the investments that, you know, and what I am actually doing now as far as commercial real estate. So it was, you know, clearly the millions that were lost in the bankruptcy, but it sort of pushed me to have to then sort of re-engage. I had to sort of reinvent myself and start to get into sort of this new arena that I hadn't been in previously.
Right. So that goes back to our theme today, which is revitalization and resurgence. You might be going through something. You lost your job, a bad breakup, just, you know, depression, whatever the case may be. But there is a way to come back from that. There is a way to revitalize yourself and to resurge, as we see is happening in the city of Detroit. So we are going to talk more about that on a personal and a professional level when we come back from our break with Chris Jackson on Motivation Mondays with Monica Marie Jones. Stay tuned and tell a friend.
You know, I saw Major. I was down at La Casa a couple weeks ago. I think